Apology Friday. I'm Derrick Day, and he is.
I am Aaron Tomlinson.
Yes. So today we're talking about food in the spirit of Thanksgiving because this is National Eat Till You Pop Day,
Yeah,
right? Or Eat Till You Poop Day, or whichever whichever comes first.
right.
So with that in mind, I'm going to try to do what we did in the green room here. I'm going to try
Yeah.
to show my plate here. It's like I got smoked turkey, I got green bean casserole, lobster mac and cheese, and
Ooh,
that's all I have on the plate for tonight. And for what's in the glass, I got this from my son, early Christmas gift. It's called Four Kings Not Gods bourbon, but if you look at it phonetically, it says fucking bourbon. And I just can't stop laughing at that. So what's on your plate and what's in the glass, man?
okay, so I'm doing local flair. So this is very local dish. So this is what you might see on our plates at Thanksgiving, minus the turkey and all the ham and all the other stuff. I don't know if
Mm.
you can see that. There we go.
So what is that?
So that is actually just mashed potatoes with a little bit of stuffing, covered with Pueblo green chili, and I'll talk about that. Well, I could talk about it now. Let me just talk about it now.
Go
So
ahead, man.
So this green chili, I've only ever been able to find it in Colorado, and sometimes grocery stores will have versions of it, but ours is very unique because it's made with Pueblo chilies. So what's in my glass is Pueblo chili beer.
Oh, no shit.
So that's what a Pueblo chili looks like, and it's its own hybrid of chili. They compare it to a mild jalapeno, but it's nothing like mild jalapeno if you ask me. Um, and so what you do for the gravy, and it's a Mexican dish, very Mexican, but they would take pork shoulder and cube it up, and then you brown it with a little bit of flour, and then you take some roasted green chilies and tomato base, and then you throw some spices in there like cumin and
Mm.
garlic and onion, stuff
Yeah.
like that, and you let it cook for 4 or 5 hours. And that's usually what we'll have over our turkey instead of gravy. I like the traditional like giblet gravy and stuff, but that's typically what you would have. And then this is, like I said, Pueblo chili beer. So they take Pueblo chilies and infuse it with beer.
Oh,
And I would not combine these because that's too much green chili.
yeah.
But that's what I had. I didn't have a good wine to pair with it or anything. So that's what we're doing.
Well, that's cool, man. That chili beer sounds dope.
It's pretty good. There's one in Breckenridge that's better than the Pueblo. People kill me for saying that, but the beer quality is better.
Okay.
So it's just much better. But I couldn't find it. I've been looking and I couldn't find it in the liquor stores. So that's what I'm doing today. So
Mm.
mm, really good. When you come out, definitely gonna have to make some green chili for you
Okay. Right on.
and have some chili beer. We'll have the chili beer is good with like barbecue or steak
Okay.
or something like that.
Well, if you provide the smoker, when I come out, I'll actually smoke something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the chili beer would be awesome with like
Yeah.
some smoked meat for sure. For sure.
So today we're talking about food, man. I'm gonna go ahead and kick it over to you to launch into
Okay.
this because we've been
So
talking about doing a food episode for a while,
yeah.
and this is a good time to do it because 'tis the season, right?
Yeah. So this is Derek and Aaron after hours conversation, right? So we got into a lengthy conversation
Yep.
a few weeks ago about the quality of food, specifically the taste of food, and how food just doesn't taste like it used to taste. And
Nope.
so I'm wondering if anybody, I don't know if anybody's watching this because, it is a holiday weekend, but I'm wondering, people, if you're watching this now or later, if you notice that the quality of food, and when I'm talking about quality of food, I'm not just talking about nutrients or texture, but the flavor of food
The
seems
taste.
to have declined considerably. And I got this revelation a while back, a few months ago, eating um, shrimp cocktail. And I remember how shrimp used to taste, right? And
Mhm.
these shrimp looked good. I mean, they looked like what I would get when I was a kid.
Yep. Yep.
and they had no flavor. The shrimp had no flavor at all. The flavor was coming entirely from the cocktail sauce. And then we were in Florida, and whenever we would go to Florida back in the 90s, we'd go to these all you could eat shrimp and or not shrimp, lobster and crab places,
Hmm. Yep.
And so we always do that. And we went this year, and it just didn't have flavor, man. The lobster, the crab just didn't seem to have the same flavor.
No.
And so you were saying, how even cornflakes
Yeah.
doesn't taste the same or as good as it used to. And so I've been thinking about this. And one of the things, hold on, my computer's dying here. Let me charge it.
Okay.
One of the things that I have noticed for sure is so the way I grew up, at least on the Tomlinson side of the family, not every dinner, but mealtime, special meals, they were an event.
Yep.
And I'm not just talking about Thanksgiving and Easter and Christmas. I'm talking about, periodically you just have an event. And it was very nuanced. I mean, so this is the way it would go. You would always have before dinner drink, which usually consisted of a cocktail. In my family, it was usually scotch and soda, or it was something simple, vodka and lime juice and on the rocks or something. But you'd have one, like the goal wasn't to, get drunk, obviously. And then you would have your meal and you would pair your wine with your food, right?
Mhm.
And then you'd have a dessert and you'd have an after dinner drink like a port or a cognac or I don't know if you remember one that was I remember my family having was called the grasshopper.
Yeah. Yep.
Which was like if I remember right, it was like some kind of a mint liqueur, chocolate mint liqueur, and something else that would mix together. I forget what's in a grasshopper. And then that was it. But the whole thing was an event, from start to finish, and it might take you an hour and a half, and it was a social time, and those were just good times. And it seems like these days everything is fast food, carry out, pop it in the microwave. And speaking of pop it in the microwave, like for me, going out to eat these days at chain restaurants, they're just serving you TV dinners, what we used to buy in the frozen food aisle.
Yep.
That's what it tastes like, right? So I got into cooking a few years ago, just because the quality of food at eating out, and I was bummed about the quality of food. So I
Yep.
thought, okay, fresh ingredients, I'm going to learn how to mix this stuff up, make it good. But even then, depending on, where you get your ingredients, the food just doesn't seem to taste the same. And so
No.
that's kind of the idea behind the episode.
Yeah, and thank you for that setup, Aaron, because you mentioned cornflakes, and I want to get on that very specifically, because I remember back in the day, you get some cornflakes and you get a banana. Now, bananas were not as ubiquitous as they are now when we were kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bananas were kind of a treat, right? But you slice up the bananas and put them on the cornflakes, and to me, that was like a party in a bowl. I mean, it was something special when you had
Mm-hmm.
cornflakes with bananas. Now it's like bananas, they don't taste the same. Even when they're at the peak of their ripeness, all of that, they don't taste as good. And to your point about the shrimp, so this is something I learned about a lot of seafood. Let's pick on seafood for a second, because a lot of seafood is farmed now,
Right.
right? So now you get a particular strain of shrimp, a particular breed of shrimp that's suitable for farming, that grows with not a whole lot of effort. And I think that what they do is they pick the most flavorless variety, and they grow it. And then they don't feed it like natural stuff. They feed it like shrimp chow, right?
Right.
If there's such a thing. I mean, it's the same thing with salmon, with trout, with all these things. Like I don't know if you remember, like going fishing and catching trout, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how trout used to taste. It had
Mm-hmm.
this really unique flavor and a really unique texture. And
Yeah.
now it's like farm raised trout is just like meh. It's like
Mhm.
just nothing to it. And the same thing, like, so lobster, you were talking about lobster. If you think about this, right, lobster when we were growing up was really that was the province of, really wealthy people or special occasions because lobster wasn't cheap.
Right.
But now they have lobster farms and they grow them to maturity quickly. They're not seasoned. And one of the things that I learned is that the deeper and colder where you find lobster and crab, the better it is,
Okay.
right? So when you find really good quality seafood, it's something that's been wild caught. It,
Hmm.
it, it was something that what was that TV show that used to come on the Discovery Channel about the most dangerous catch, right?
Okay. Hmm.
And these guys are out there, fishing for king crab, right? If you catch one of these king crab, that rascal is going to be special because these guys are going out in the storms. They're going out in the deep water. They're braving the waves and the swells to get this right. It's not something that you just you set up pots out offshore and you get some crab hatchlings and you throw them in there and they do their thing. It's not the same thing, and so one of the things I want to talk about are like vegetables
Hmm.
and fruit
Hmm.
because I remember when we used to get strawberries when we were kids, or blueberries,
Hmm.
or raspberries, any berry, pick a berry, and they were always just like so incredibly sweet, and the flavor was so pronounced. It's like you could take a raspberry or a blueberry or a strawberry in your mouth and you knew exactly what you were eating. Now it's like sort of this generic sweetness and barely flavor of the fruit itself because everybody comes up with these advanced farming techniques so they're able to grow things faster and grow it in bigger quantity. But I think that when you do that you lose something, right?
Hmm.
And so one of the reasons why I think this episode is timely because one of the things about Thanksgiving as a holiday is that people are really into making shit from scratch,
Yeah.
right? And so there's a care that goes into the making of a meal at this particular time of the year that just doesn't happen most of the time. So it's like people are looking for the very freshest green beans, the very freshest squash or collard greens or turnip greens, mustard greens. They're looking for the freshest turkey or the freshest ham. They're looking for all the best ingredients because this is a time when food draws us together. Now, I have another take on food. I want to basically come back to this later, but I want to talk about the importance of food to culture and how I believe I'm going to throw this out here before I kick it over to you. How I believe that the key to world peace is food, and y'all ain't ready. But Aaron, go ahead.
Excuse me. I figured you'd take it. I figured you'd take it somewhere like that. So I did a little bit of research on this, and by research, what I mean is I did a Google search.
I'm a researcher.
Oh, this isn't deep. This isn't deep, in-depth, quality scientific research here. But I was just curious: uh, is there at least a perception out there? Is there reasons that you can just generally Google as to, hey, food doesn't taste like it used to? Like my metaphysical brain immediately starts thinking about things like the Mandela effect and the multiverse. I must have fallen into a wormhole somewhere where Donald Trump is president and food doesn't taste the same.
Yeah.
um, but so there's a few theories out there. There's a few theories. But most of them, it's one of two things. Either the food itself has changed or our taste buds, our
Mm.
perceptions, sensory perceptions have changed. So either it doesn't taste as good, either for objective reasons, the food outside it isn't as good, or subjective reasons, our brains or senses aren't working as well as they used to.
Mm.
And so that changes. So it's either on the subjective perceptual
Let
level
me,
or
let me say something real quick. Let me throw something in there
sure, sure.
because that subjective thing. might work for someone who doesn't know any better, right? That has no frame of reference from the past. But that ain't our testimony.
Well, exactly.
Keep going.
Exactly. So then the third theory is that it's age. That as we age, just like our eyesight gets worse and our hearing gets worse and our steadiness and walking gets worse, that our taste buds
Oh God.
and olfactory senses lose their sharpness, their keenness.
Mm.
Um, but I don't know if I'm buying into that either because, I'm, this isn't a new thing for me. It just stood out to me with the shrimp because here's why. Because the shrimp that I had looked like fresh caught, wild caught jumbo shrimp. It looked like real jumbo shrimp, right? Like the shrimp cocktails you used to get in nice restaurants.
Yep.
And that has a very distinct flavor, much like trout, right? Very distinct. Like you're not going to confuse shrimp with crab or crawfish, right?
Yeah. Right.
And it just wasn't there, man. And I was excited because I thought, oh, finally I'm going to get to taste the taste of shrimp again. So this isn't like something that is just coming about in my 50s. This is something I've been thinking about for a longer period of time than that. But so that's it. So, but if they go from the objective standpoint that the quality of food has gone down, then it's what's the word for it? I mean, it's capitalism, but it's we're going to produce more, make more available at less quality. Therefore, we can make more money by selling it to the masses, right? So, global conglomerates and that kind of thing.
Mass production.
Yeah, exactly. Mass production, and also then you combine that with sort of the immediate gratification that we have of I want to just be able to buy something and heat it up and have it taste great, or just modern conveniences, right? Modern pace of life. But it's for me, you want to talk about world peace and culture. And for me, this is a microcosm doesn't feel like the right word. This is a example of the dumbing down of our society and how like you mentioned, Thanksgiving, we go out and find the freshest ingredients. We spend all day or 2 or 3 days preparing, maybe brine the turkey for a couple days before we cook it or something like that. Yep. And so it just feels like we are getting so shortchanged that this is just another example of the dumbing down of our society and how the masses, if you will, are so willing to just settle for whether it's convenience in some cases or laziness in some cases or the fast pace of society. You have to have a 2-income earning household now, so you don't have someone that can stay home and spend all day making something. But it's just there's got to be a better word for it than dumbing down. But hopefully you get what I mean.
I mean, if you think about it, like homogenization.
There you go.
That's a good word.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, homogenization, yes, but also just, they'll just settle for anything.
Yeah.
And we just do. Like, we settle for less in our leaders. We settle for less in our, even cars. So, like, cars have gotten better, no doubt. I mean, the technology and stuff behind cars have gotten safer. They've gotten more efficient, more fuel efficient, all the way around. But they're all gray, white, or black. Like, back in the day, you could, put your personality into it by picking, I want banana yellow, or I want, deep purple or something. Or I want, but now it's just, everything is, like you said, homogenized.
Yep.
But with the homogenization, a dumbing down.
Well, it's like when you homogenize things, you simplify things, and that makes it great for things like the supply chain. It makes things great for profitability. You increase your margins and all of that.
Yeah.
But to your point, it is a dumbing down. It's like, and it's funny how people accept less now. It's like people will say, okay, I'm eating lobster tail. And I think I'm doing good because lobster is a commodity that's associated with luxury, right? But you're accepting the fact that you're eating lobster, but you have no reference point to what is either good or not good lobster, right? So
Exactly.
you're just, you're okay with it just for it being what it is. And this is another thing that you were talking about, like fast food restaurants. Like if you go to Chili's or Applebee's, I don't know if you could say these things like on the air, but
Yeah.
basically, what they're serving you is essentially a TV dinner.
Mhm.
It's a frozen dish. It doesn't begin as fresh. It isn't like you have like these chefs that are trying to make things. And here's another thing. This is I learned this as being a consultant in IT and working for some of the major food producers in the country. You know that when you look at someone like say Tyson Foods, that there are just as many chemists that work there as there are chefs when it comes to making the dishes. Why? Because you want to arrive at a chemically consistent product that yields the same result over and over again.
Right.
So I was having dinner with a friend at Olive Garden, a special friend. But we were eating, and I was like, okay, basically, Olive Garden is like the McDonald's of Italian food. And what I mean by that is that it's
Yep.
not particularly great,
No.
but it's consistent. And you can go to an Olive Garden anywhere in the country, and it's pretty much as good as any other Olive Garden is going to be. It's not going to be particularly great, but it's going to be good. So I think that there are a couple of things. One is that we live in this age of instant gratification that you pointed out. Everybody wants they want it and they want it now, right? And they want it at a certain level, right? And this is the other thing too, that I think there's not an expectation of real goodness anymore.
No. For
That
sure.
the bar has been lowered, and so the expectation is a certain degree of functional mediocrity.
There you go.
That it's okay. It's not offensive. It,
Right.
it's not bad tasting, but it gets the job done, right? And I think that one of the things that we need to start looking for, and I think we as the consumers have the ability to drive this a little bit more than we give ourselves credit for. Because if you just simply say, okay, I'm not going to, okay, let me give you a good example. A lot of people buy frozen turkeys for Thanksgiving, right? Why? Because frozen turkeys, they're cheap. The per pound cost is relatively low, and so you can get a lot of meat for not a lot of money. But if you buy a comparably sized fresh turkey, it's going to cost you about 40% more, right? And the more granular you get about the type of fresh turkey you get, you go to from fresh turkey to free range fresh turkey to organic fresh turkey to some particular feeding type of fresh turkey to pre-brined fresh turkey. And the more granular, the more specialized you get, the more expensive it gets. But also, I believe that one of the things that happens is the more specialized you get, the better the taste and the better the quality of the finished product is going to be. So I think that one of the things that we need to do insofar as food is concerned is I think that we need to be a bit more discerning and a bit more demanding,
Yeah.
right? And one of the things that I do, and this is just me, is that when I'm buying fresh vegetables, I look for organic. I look for locally grown. I look for all of these things because, and that's another thing too, is that now you have produce that comes all the way from China or
Right.
Argentina or Brazil, and there's no way that that food is going to taste as good by the time it hits your table. There's no way. Time and distance
Hmm.
impact quality, right?
Hmm.
So you look at say locally sourced, and the more granular you get, the higher quality you get. right? But I think that one of the things is that we're so. I got to throw this one out here too. Low prices. We are so price conscious. Like we are the Walmart generation.
Hmm.
You know, we don't care how it gets here as long as it gets here as cheaply as possible.
Hmm.
And what happens is that we begin to settle for less quality because we're getting it at a price that we can afford. In other words, now remember again going back to when we were kids, shrimp was expensive when we were kids. Lobster, crab, all of this stuff was expensive. Certain fish, sea bass, for example, or mahi mahi or swordfish. These were things that you just didn't see in supermarkets. Now it's like ubiquitous. Everybody has it, right? And they have it at a price that mere mortals can afford.
Right.
And I think that when you add all of that up, you get a product that on its best day it can't hope for anything more than mediocrity.
So I grew up in a farming community. So, we would every fall we would get our sweet corn, cantaloupes, and watermelon were my favorite because that's what grew well here,
Hmm.
right? But you also get tomatoes, cucumbers, onions, chilies that I talked
Hmm.
about. Um, but like watermelon, for example, like when we would buy the watermelon from the local farmer, and we would just go to their store. I mean, they would have their own sort of farmers market booth in front of their house, right?
Yeah.
You just go to their house and people are lined up and they're buying their produce straight from the farmer. And and we had an orchard in where I grew up, so we grew peaches and apricots and plums and apples and things like that in our orchard. And but watermelon, this is a good example. So watermelons used to be full of seeds, man. I mean, you take a small bite of watermelon, you get 3 or 4 big brown seeds. Now you buy it in the grocery store and you have very few little tiny white seeds in it, right? And the watermelon just doesn't taste the same.
Yeah.
So, and then we raised pigs. So we would take, a few of our pigs to the butcher shop. So we would have the butcher, cut it up. We'd have our own bacon, our own ham, our own pork, and you'd freeze it. And then you would take the tomatoes and always in the fall was a huge time when my mom would do her own canning, right?
Yep.
So canning green beans, tomatoes, peaches, nothing better than a canned peaches with, sugar and oh my goodness. Um, and then we had local butcher shops because people raise their own cows, pigs, chickens, turkeys. Like I'm pretty sure the turkeys that I would have when I was a child at my grandparents, they raised themselves, right? So you're talking about this like buying a butterball out of the freezer
Yep.
at Kroger's. Um, and I'm just thinking in my head, if I was going to go get a fresh turkey where I live now, I don't know where I would go because all those butcher shops and stuff have closed up. And there is no such thing as, going to the farming community out where I grew up and buying stuff because it also became absorbed by one of two things, either by these larger food conglomerates that are farming it and then shipping it all over, or the government paid people not to farm.
Yep.
Like, I can take my risks with the hailstorms this year. I can take my risks with, how is my crop going to harvest based on the weather? And are we going to have an early freeze? Are we going to have a hail that's going to destroy my crops, in early September, which doesn't happen often, but it can happen? Are we
Yep.
going to have a drought and I'm going to have to use more irrigation and my water bill is going to go up? Or the government could just pay me what I would make and more to just let my ground sit fallow. And that's a very real thing
Yep.
in the farming communities here. And it's just crazy. I told you about some people I know that are ranchers that there's 3 or 4 beef companies in the world that control the price of beef,
Yep.
and they're able to price the smaller, local farmer out of it. And so, yeah, man. I mean, even just trying to get fresh stuff
Yep.
can be a challenge. Like you can't just go down to the local, but at least not here,
Yeah.
because they put all these small people that were,
Yep.
making
All
their
the mom
living.
and pop. Yeah.
They put, the mom and pops where you could get the fresh stuff. They put them all out of business. And the government helped do that, by the way.
You said something there. I want to zero in on this for a second, right? About letting the land lay fallow, right? Which in commercial farming, that's like unheard of, right? They don't do crop rotation or letting the land rest or anything. They're constantly farming
True.
and constantly adding non-naturally occurring nutrients into the soil. So you get this product that grows rapidly, it grows big, and it's beautiful and all of that, but it's devoid of flavors, devoid of nutrients. And so you were talking about letting the land lay fallow. Let's talk about that for a minute,
Yeah.
because when you're talking about growing crops, that was a thing. My great grandparents used to farm, and there were patches of land where one season nothing grew on it.
Right.
It just sat, and it was a time for the earth and the soil to heal, before you replant it.
Right. Yeah. But what I'm talking about is they would come in and pay you. I don't know what the thought process was behind it, but it's like, we'll pay you for 10 years not to farm.
Yeah,
Like it wasn't to heal the land so you could have better crops. It was to empower these massive conglomerates that were controlling food.
yep. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, like where basically the government pays you not to farm because that helps to control. Because, like for example, dairy, right? It said that if you took the government manipulation of that market out of it, that a gallon of milk would be like about $3 a gallon. It would be something ridiculously cheap. But now, what is a gallon of milk? It's like it's about $7 a gallon, something like that.
About 7, yeah.
So really, if you think about it, milk is a renewable resource. You
Mhm.
know, because as long as you have cows, you can produce milk. And if you think about it, the price of milk should probably be cheaper than the price of a gallon of gas.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, but you're paying a whole lot of money for it, and but part of the reason for that is that the government says, okay, we're going to pay you not to produce, which is going to keep the price of milk level at a certain rate.
Right.
And that's another thing too. Like, so meat. I want to talk about this too because like back in the day, it was like basically beef was all grass fed.
Hmm.
Cows went out and grazed in the pasture and they ate like that until it was time for the slaughter, right? Well, now cows may eat some grass, but for the most part, they're fed a certain type of formulated food chemistry again, and then they go to the feedlot where they're fed a rich grain diet
Hmm.
to fatten them up quickly before they go to slaughter. And so like you'll find like feedlot meat, like people talk about like Iowa corn-fed beef, right? As if that's a thing. But when you look at it, that meat is all nicely marbled. It has like lots of fat in the muscle tissue, but
Hmm.
it doesn't taste like anything.
No.
You know, it has the texture, it has the tenderness, but it doesn't have the taste.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you mentioned like letting the ground grow fallow or rotating your crops, right?
Yeah,
So the neighbors might grow onions one year and sweet corn the next year, right? Um, but now it's just, the ground is healed or replenished
yeah,
through chemicals and chemical fertilizers and things like that. And you just think, what are we doing? What are we doing?
yeah,
Like, how could that possibly be good and healthy for us? And I just heard today on the radio, like not today, this week on the radio, that the average um, lifespan keeps declining in America. I don't know around the world, but in America.
yeah. Hmm.
And the average male can expect, I think when I was younger, like I want to say, in the 70s or 80s, and this is going off memory, so I could be totally wrong.
Yep, yep.
But I want to say the average lifespan of a male was 80 years old, right? And my grandparents lived, my great grandma lived to be 102. My grandpa lived to be 90. My grandma lived into her 80s. Other side of the family, same thing. Now the average lifespan for a male is 70.
Yep.
And how much of this correlates? I don't know.
Man, that's depressing being 61, man.
I know. I know. I can imagine. Sorry. But I was shocked because you would think with modern medicine and everything that the average age would increase.
No, but what we're talking about here is that the quality of food is garbage, right?
Mhm.
We are not eating at the same quality that we
No.
did before. It's like, yeah, we know more now. Okay, so we know to watch out for saturated fats. We know to watch out for things that are known carcinogens. We know about all of these things, but it's like knowing about all of that, we still like we're not really focusing on the quality of our food. We seem to be more obsessed with quantity and with appearance, right?
Mhm.
And instead of looking at you were talking about watermelons, right? And being able to find it is hard to find a good ripe sweet watermelon nowadays. That's almost like the holy grail of fruit picking now.
Yeah. So true.
Because the quality of watermelon has declined, and that is like everything else. And again, I think that part of it is that you were talking about like roadside stands where you could pick up a watermelon that's locally grown.
Yep.
Now you'll look at like watermelon and say, product of Costa Rica. Okay,
Mm.
how far is Costa Rica from pretty much anywhere in the United States?
Mm.
It's a long fucking way away. And so they'll start with the watermelon, and what they'll do is they pick it right before it ripens, right before it ripens, and then what they do is they do this with tomatoes. They do this with a lot of different vegetables. They gas them. They discharge some gas over them, and this gas helps to ripen them. And so it's not a natural ripening process. So they ripen in terms of what the expected look is, but the sugars that would be produced inside.
Mhm.
And then that's another thing too. Let me talk about tomatoes for a second because I'm a tomato connoisseur. I am a tomato fucking snob. I love tomatoes. And so one of the things now is that if you're going to get a good tomato, you want what is known as an heirloom tomato. And heirloom tomatoes are tomatoes that come from seed stock that came before GMO, that came before commercial farming and all of this. And so when you get these tomatoes and they grow out, they don't look all perfectly red and round. They have lumps and bumps and divots in them,
Right.
and they're weird looking. They look like fucking aliens, right? But when you cut into them and you eat them, they taste fantastic, right? And it puts me in the mind of my grandmother. She used to grow the best tomatoes. I mean, the best. And any of my cousins that are watching, y'all can vouch for this. That your Aunt Bertha, my grandmother, she grew the best tomatoes. Now, contrast this with what you get in the store, and it's like there's no flavor, the texture is off. So one of the things that they've done is they have genetically modified the basic beefsteak tomato and spliced a fish gene into them. I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. You can go and you can search this and verify it. But they splice a fish gene in them because that fish gene helps the tomato stop its decomposition process. So what happens is you get a perfectly firm, ripe tomato at the market, but it tastes like crap. It has no flavor. It's been genetically altered, so all of the flavor is gone. Because the sugars that normally occur from the ripening and subsequent decomposition of the fruit, it doesn't happen. And this is done with like a lot of different fruits, especially vine fruits, strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, things or grapes, they come from vines. Vine plants are like that. Watermelon. And so the natural sugars are not produced, so you don't get the flavor. And so you look at it, you say, okay, this is a watermelon. I know this is a watermelon, but I cut into it and it just tastes like water. There's no melon in it, no flavor. And so one of the let me go back to something. I got to go back to something real quick because we were talking about shrimp, right?
Yeah.
When was the last time you bought shrimp with the head on?
Oh, yeah. I don't even know. I've gotten into restaurants a couple places, but
Yeah.
actually bought it. No, I have no idea.
So here's something that I found is that if you go to and you'll find this like in Asian markets and Latino markets, right? Where you can buy full head-on shrimp, right? And a lot of times they're live. They have them like in a tank, and you scoop them out and all of that. What I found is that those shrimp with the head on, if you cut the heads off, then you peel or you devein them and all of that, the flavor of those is better because you're getting the whole shrimp and the whole flavor portfolio, because all of the hormones and whatever that are in the animal are now in the flesh of the animal. But when you buy like this frozen, peeled, deveined jumbo shrimp, and you're like, oh, well, that's convenient, but there's no flavor, right? So I think that part of it is, again, if we can alter our expectations a bit, I think that we can raise the food quality. But that's going to require conscientious effort from everybody who is a consumer of food, and that's a hard one because we all want, we live in the microwave society, better, faster, cheaper. And then another thing too, preparation. Okay, so you were talking about microwave, right? When you cook food in the microwave, it's not the same as when you prepare it in a skillet or prepare it in the oven. And I found something else too. Like one of the big things now is the air fryer. The air fryer is like it's the godsend of food preparation because you can cook the food almost at the speed of the microwave, but without the side effects of the microwave, and you get a better flavor profile. But I even think the air frying is kind of a cop out. Because again, the faster you prepare something, I think that actually impacts the flavor profile. Some things are just made to cook a little slower. So anyway, I had to say that before I kicked
but
it back to you.
I remember when microwaves came out.
Yep.
And the big deal with microwave for us, maybe I'm just a hillbilly, but the big thing for the microwave for us was we didn't have to heat hot water in a tea kettle anymore,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Instead of waiting 10 minutes or whatever for your water to boil or whatever it is, 5 minutes, whatever it is.
Yeah.
On the tea kettle, when you wanted hot chocolate, you just zap the microwave for a minute and boom, you got your hot chocolate, right? Or heating up your food that you already cooked, right? So leftovers, like my leftover plate tonight, I heated it up in the microwave for a minute. And that was about the full extent of the magic of the microwave back then, I remember when they first came out with microwave popcorn, just the idea that we had figured it out. We had got these brown bags because you used to get the brown bags at the grocery store, right? And so we'd get these little brown bags and we would put a bunch of popcorn in there and then put it in the microwave and it would pop itself. And we're like, oh, wow, this is so cool, But now there's stuff specifically designed, almost everything, to be cooked in the microwave, right? I don't remember it being a cooking thing. It was just like a convenience to heat shit up. You know what I mean? But not really to cook it. And you sure as hell didn't have, microwave popcorn and, these TV dinners that you just pop in the microwave, or burritos or whatever that you pop in the microwave, or, everything's microwavable today. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Another thing too, like we talk about like food and eggs. I think eggs is
Oh,
another really good example because eggs, it used to be eggs were the product of a rooster doing it with a hen, right? And you got eggs, right? Well, now they figured out how to synthesize the eggs without fertilizing them. We get hens to produce the eggs with hormones. And you know what? I never forget this. When I was in college, one of my lab partners, she said, "You know what an egg is?" I said, "What do you mean?" Yeah, I know what an egg is. She says, "No, it's a chicken abortion."
well, I remember back in the day. Of course, we got our eggs, locally, um, or from the chicken. But it's frequently. I don't know how often, but pretty frequently, there was blood in that egg, and you couldn't cook it.
Yep,
When was the last time you had blood in an egg that you cracked?
never. I mean, not anything from like store bought eggs. No.
No. And that used to really be a thing. Like, oh, this one had blood in it. We throw it out. You know what I mean? Um, golly, it's crazy, crazy,
So
crazy, crazy. So let's come back to the cultural aspect of this and world peace because I want to hear your thoughts on that.
I'm glad you asked, Aaron, because this is sort of the zenith of food for me, right? I work in a highly multicultural industry.
Yes.
There are people literally from all over the world, all walks of life, all ethnicities, all religions, all cultures, all countries. And it's really fascinating. But one of the things that I learned is that in order to have successful projects, you have to develop team chemistry.
Yeah.
And the easiest, fastest way to
Mm.
develop team chemistry is to take everybody out to dinner, right? And what you have to do, you have to keep an open mind with this because you have to eat at different places. I remember the first time I had Indian food, I was
Mm.
working with some Indian colleagues, and we were in Philadelphia. And I never forget this. The guy's name was Saibal. And Saibal said, "Hey, I've got a cousin over here in North Philly that just opened up a restaurant. So let's go there." So he did two things. One is he got a big party of people to come and eat at his cousin's restaurant, which helped his cousin economically. And he got a whole bunch of people, like myself included. That was my very first time having Indian food.
Hmm.
And I loved it. I absolutely adore Indian food. I
Yeah, me too.
love Pakistani food. I love Lebanese food. I love Greek food. I love Hungarian food. I love food from all. And what I've learned is that if you really want to get to know someone, meet
Mm.
them over a plate of food.
Yeah,
And
you're
one of
right.
the things that I learned is I would sit down and I learn about, like, because this is back in the day when I was a Christian pastor, and
Mm.
I'll never forget. I used to take so much shit from other Christian pastors because they would be like, "Well, did you tell them about Jesus?" Well, no, I didn't tell them about Jesus. I'm just breaking bread with these guys, right? Oh well, you can't just leave them there. You have to use that as an opportunity to witness Jesus to them. And I'm like, no, that's not the point. The point is, I'm sharing something about me because here's the thing: what people don't realize, food is deeply intimate and personal.
Right.
Because
And it's sensual.
yeah, it's like when people are taking something into their body, y'all listen. This is like sex. Honestly,
Mm.
it is like sex. Basically, when you have food with someone, you're having a form of intercourse with them. Now, I know there's some of y'all that might sound a little, well, a little far fetched, but bear with me, stick with me, because I'm going somewhere here. That when you break bread with people, they begin to see you in a more intimate light. and they will begin to share things with you that they would not share with you in the office. They begin to share things about their families, about their children, about their hopes, about their dreams, about their culture, how they grew up, right? And this gives you an opportunity to share the same thing about yourself with them. And so one of the things is that when you basically when you are dealing with someone at that level, it's like you're opening up something. I mean, and I'm going to tell you, okay, so Aaron, you're going to love this, right? You're going to love this because you're opening something spiritual. You're literally opening up a metaphysical portal with people that allows energy to flow between two different conduits, right? And 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 I really believe that if every human being, whether in America or in the world, that if you just said that maybe once or twice a month, it doesn't have to be all the time, but once or twice a month, that when I eat out, then I'm going to make it a point to either eat out with someone who I don't know or I don't know well, or is a different culture or a different ethnicity than I am, or to eat in a place that you would ordinarily not eat.
Yep.
You know, and in doing that, again, you're opening up something. You're making something available. You're receiving something, but you're also transmitting a certain energy into that space, right? And so here's the thing, right? When people have stereotypes, like for example, someone who's grown up in China, for example, may have some preconceived notions about Black Americans. But if they have dinner with a Black American, then they'll realize that a lot of these stereotypes that they've been, fed are not true. And then they get a dose of what it is really to enjoy the company of a person. Or, for example, if you're an American, if you're a white American and you eat with an Indian from India, you might have some preconceived notions about what Indians are like. But once you have this meal, those preconceived notions go out the window because then you begin to see this person, as another human being with hopes, dreams of and ambitions just like you. And I really believe, and this is I say this in from the bottom of my heart, and I've experienced this for myself because again, my job exposes me to people of all ethnicities, all cultures, all religions, and because of my career, I've traveled the world. And I've actually been able to enjoy meals and enjoy people's companies in their native space.
Mhm.
And one of the ways the way that they greet people, if you go to Hungary, one of the ways that the Hungarians greet you is over food. They invite you in. If you go to Ireland, people bring you in. They invite you to break bread with them. If you go to Syria or to Lebanon, it's the same thing. No matter where you go, if you go to Nigeria or you go to Kenya, you go to Angola or you go to Congo, and it's the same thing. It's like people they bring you in. This is their way of saying, hey, I welcome you. Hey, I honor you. Hey, I value you. And
Absolutely.
if we did that,
Absolutely.
it changes the world. So that's what I was saying about world peace. So that's where I'm going
No,
to shut up.
you really are hitting on. I mean, you really are hitting on the spiritual aspects of this. What I would call the spiritual aspects of
Yep.
this, and it's so powerful because I was thinking about it as we were getting ready. I was like, it's it's one of the food and drink is one of the few pleasurable sensory experiences outside of sex that we get to have.
Yes.
Because I mean, if you think about it, most of your senses are geared towards alerting you, except for I mean, there's sight and hearing that helps you navigate, but most of your feeling senses are geared towards alerting you to
Yeah.
problems outside of sexual contact or affection. Your sense of feeling is totally geared towards pain
Yeah.
and alert, right?
Yeah.
And so, but then you have these other faculties of sensory experience that are sensual, right? Of smell and taste and sharing. So, I mean, you're right on the money. Like you're sharing a sensual experience, and you take it to another level if you prepare the meal
Yeah.
because you're putting your love, you're putting your effort, you're putting your time and energy and your dollars into this to create a pleasing experience for the person that you're hosting, right?
Right.
And so they're eating, they're not just eating the food, they're eating you.
Yeah.
They're eating your energy, your effort, your and you know, and see, this is where, oh man, like if we could just come back to the sacredness of food. Like people don't realize this, but in the New Testament, who you ate with and what you ate was way more taboo than who you had sex with
Yeah.
or how you had sex.
That's exactly right.
Way more taboo.
That was the whole thing with Peter
Way more
and the
taboo.
vision of the sheet, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like we can't relate to that today because we just go out to, you know,
Yeah.
Olive Garden and just chow down or whatever, McDonald's, whatever, because the food's lost its sacredness, you know. But I mean, I long for the days like creating a plate of food is an art form. I mean, as much as it's a science, obviously there's science behind it. But what I mean is, it's not just cooking the food. It's not just the flavor profile, but it's how you plate the food.
Yeah.
Plate the food.
Yeah.
It's how you pair the food. What comes first in the courses? What wine or drink do you pair it with to bring out the flavors in both the drink and the food? I mean, there's a lot of thought and intensity that can go into that,
Yeah.
right? And drinks, you know, cocktails, making cocktails used to be an art form. Being a bartender used to be an art form, right?
Yep.
And especially after Prohibition, which is kind of where it all kind of got started, because it's like we need to give people, we need to entice them, we need to make them want to come back to the drink, right? And so that's where a lot of your cocktails and stuff that we have today originated. Was we've got to make these pleasing aesthetically and to this, you know, sense of smell and sense of taste so that people will want to come back and start drinking liquor again,
Yeah.
you know, besides just moonshine. I mean, if you think about it, people were drinking fucking moonshine
Yeah.
during Prohibition.
Bathtub whiskey.
Their hands on, right? And so you think about, I mean, man, it's just, everything you said is just like, if we could just realize the potential and the power of this instead of just, you know, heating up our frozen burrito that we got at the local convenience store for a quick lunch
Yep.
together or something. You know what I'm saying?
Can I take a minute to pick on Jesus for a minute here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right? Because as an ex-pastor, you'll appreciate this, right? That what Jesus was talking about was not talking about cannibalism. He's not talking about, you know, eat my body and drink my blood, right? You know what Jesus was saying? Eat a fucking meal with somebody.
Right.
You know, literally communion. When you
Yeah.
commune with someone, you are consuming with them. You are
Yes.
partaking with them. And so
Yes.
what it's saying is that basically what Jesus was talking about, or the teaching of Jesus was that this whole act of consuming a meal, bread and wine, you know, that this is a holy, it's a sacred act.
Yes.
And I think that's pretty much okay. Let me throw this out here. I think part of the reason why food has lost its flavor is because food has lost its significance. It's like there was a time when eating was a sacred thing. You know that like for example, in the old days when people would hunt for their food, they were honoring the animal that they killed to eat. It wasn't just killing for the sake of killing. It was a sacred act that this animal was sacrificing its life
Oh
to
God.
feed my family. And so now I teach my family to honor the creature because of
Yes.
what their sacrifice means to me. And so likewise, when we eat, like, and that's the whole thing about Thanksgiving, right? The whole turkey thing that goes back to to the pilgrims and all this other stuff, right? This was a sacred thing because this bird sacrificed something to create peace between two disparate groups of people.
Mhm.
And we've lost that sacredness. So if you think about this, Aaron, that if and I'm going to tell you, a lot of my atheist friends are going to be, they're going to be really, shit posting on me because of this, but that there is a sacredness to eating.
No, absolutely.
And I think that we as Americans, we've certainly lost that. But I think that because what globalization in a lot of ways is an Americanization of the world. Okay, the world may not want to admit that, but there is some truth to that, right? I think that there's some things that that America inherits from other nations, but I think largely we kind of export. We're a gross exporter of culture, right? And and I think that
Yep.
our lack of sacredness
Yep. I agree.
concerning
100%.
food is getting exported to other nations, and I think that that's a sad thing because again, if you've and you're like me, Aaron, you've traveled extensively, and you've been to Europe, you've been to Poland, to Russia, and you've been to places in Africa and all of that, and
Yep.
you know how people eat. That when they come together, it's like this is a very special time. It isn't just like I'm just eating to try to satisfy my body's need for nutrition. This is a divine moment, a divine convergence between groups of people,
Yep.
and I think that that's another thing that we need to reclaim. That we need to.
Y-
And I'm gonna tell you something. I'm just as guilty as anyone else of this because like when I'm working during the day, I'll say, okay, I need something frozen or I need something quick. I need something that I can cook it quick, eat it quick because I'm constantly on the go. I'm working and my
Sure.
job is very
Everybody
demanding.
did that.
But
Right.
we need to dispense with that and really say, okay, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to create a hard stop in my day and I'm going to take time to commune with what I'm eating. And better yet, if I can, to commune with that food and commune with someone. And watch this for everybody that's watching this. That doesn't always, I mean, sometimes you don't have the luxury of sitting down at a table with someone. But just like how Aaron and I, we're in two different places, but we're communing right now. We sat up and we shared a meal together. We shared some drinks together, and you can do that online. Take advantage of the
Yeah.
technology, but
Yeah. I
make
think,
your eating time a sacred time.
yeah, I think making some sacred meal times, right? So like on Fridays when Julie was working, and when we first started with Freology Friday, and I would order pizza for the boys, that became sacred to them. That became like that's our thing that we do on Friday night with Dad. We order pizza and have that together. Um, but I'm just thinking back to my, like having dinner together as a family was a sacred time growing up. And we've tried to keep maintain that. It's hard, because you got a lot going on. And I'm not trying to shame anybody that can't do that. But we try to at least Sunday dinners, were a sacred time for sure, sacred meal time. And there was ritual that went with it. And by ritual is not a religious word. Ritual just means, if you get up and brush your teeth every morning or take a shower
Yeah,
frequently, you have rituals.
right. Yep.
Thank God, right? um, but also there was a sacredness in this sense that at least the way I was raised, you couldn't just come to the dinner table any old way. Like you couldn't just, and by that I mean I couldn't come with my shirt off or
Right.
be running around the summer, my shirt off and my shorts, whatever. I couldn't come in my shorts and no shirt to the table, to the dinner
Yep.
table. I had to present myself. It's kind of like going to church because we would wear our Sunday's best,
Yep.
right? And then there were manners. Manners were rituals about how you partook. You know, We had to sit up straight. We had to put our napkin in our lap. I had to put my hand that I wasn't eating with in my lap. I couldn't have my elbows on the table.
Yeah.
I'd get in trouble for that.
Yep.
I get smacked for that. But that was all part of protecting the sacredness. I mean, if you think about it, we think, oh, well, manners are stupid now, like who cares? And how many people actually teach their children manners, like real table manners, or real manners in public? Like we've just done away with the sacred. We've done away with the sacred in our culture.
Yep.
And so manners were a sort of a ritual form of this is how you do it, and they don't really make sense necessarily. But it's how we do it,
Yep.
right? And it protected the sacredness of the mealtime. So man, I love I didn't see this coming in this episode at
Hey,
all,
grown in
but
real time, man.
you are dead on the money with this.
But
Dead on the money with
let me
this.
talk about something else too, right? Because I got into a big dust up on social media with a guy because I was saying basically things like Twinkies and things like that. It's garbage, right? And so the guy had accused me of food shaming, and the guy has a page. Yeah, I forget what he calls himself, but anyway, the guy has like hundreds of thousands of followers, right? And this guy just really went in on me. And here's the thing, I think that we need to pay more attention to what we eat, right? And I'm not saying that like food shaming, because sometimes there's a level of what people can afford. But I also think that that's something that can be addressed, it can be changed.
Oh,
But there's an old saying that if it comes from a plant, eat it. If it's made in a plant, don't.
I like that.
And if you look at the makeup of the modern supermarket, everything on the outside, on the perimeter of the store, is all natural. Fruits and vegetables, dairy, meat, that sort of thing, right? Fresh juices, fresh fruit. It's on the perimeter of the store. Everything in the center of the store is all stuff that's manufactured. And there was another statistic that I saw that it said that 90% of the food that's available in supermarkets didn't exist 100 years ago. Also, 90% of the diseases don't exist that exist or that didn't exist 100 years ago exist now.
But yeah, I'm struggling with the food shaming part of it because I get it. Like it's cheaper to eat junk and garbage. It is. It's much cheaper. I mean, I spent over $50 just to make a side dish for Thanksgiving to take, right? But let's be honest. Some of the best food in the world is because poor people figured out how to make something that most people wouldn't eat taste good.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, my favorite meal still to this day, my all-time favorite meal is beans and cornbread.
I love beans and
Because
cornbread.
my mom knew exactly how to season it to just, man, there's just nothing like it for me. And I'm sure there's childhood memories and stuff like that. But, think about Cajun food.
Yeah.
They had to figure out all that spicy sort of combination and stuff because they were getting the scraps.
Yep.
And they had to figure out, I mean, lobster was a big deal, or I don't know if it is today, but, like you were talking about, it was a delicatessen. But back in the day, it was, indentured servants sued their masters for feeding them too much lobster because it was so readily available on the shores of America and the South, and it was basically garbage. I mean, you think about who's going to eat a shrimp, who's going to eat crawfish,
Right.
like whoever pulled a crawfish up and said, "Oh, I know, this is going to be yummy." I'm going to tell you, crawfish pie, crawfish etouffee. There's nothing better. So I don't know, man. If somebody's saying, "Well, I don't have the money to eat good," come on, man. Some of the best cultural gifts in the world, as far as flavor and food goes, were given to us by people that were at the very bottom of society's rung of the ladder because they figured out how to take something that nobody would ever eat in the upper crusts and figured out how to make it taste good. So I don't know.
Well, you know, a true
I
story.
mean, I got to push back on the food shaming thing because you don't have the money kind of thing. Because I'm like, but
No, I mean,
I
you know,
don't know.
like that, I mean, that's where this guy was coming
I'm
at
not
me.
saying that. I'm not saying you
Yeah,
said that. I know that guy, but I'm just saying that mentality. I got to push
yeah,
back against that mentality because I'm not buying that as an excuse.
no. And you know, like one of you know, I like smoking meat, and one of the cuts of meat that I love to smoke is brisket. And do you know why brisket is a thing? Because this came to be with slaves, right? Brisket was not the best cut of meat. It was tough, it was sinewy, it had a lot of fat in it. But what happened was is that the slaves in Texas and Oklahoma and Louisiana, they figured out how to smoke this and make it into a
Yep.
delicacy. And
Yep.
then white pit masters figured out how to duplicate it, and it became a thing, right? That was not good meat. Ribs were not considered to be good meat. But
You think?
now it's a thing. So and then when I was talking about India, my Hindu brothers and sisters,
Yeah.
they like you have like a lot of spicy dishes from India, right? And they're spicy because the spicy food kept parasites from taking up residence in your body, or it would counteract the poor quality of water that they had. So all of these things, they're spicy because these are things that they had to do in order to deal with their environment, right? And that's the thing that what I think that another thing that people don't understand is how certain dishes come to be.
Yeah. 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 I'm thinking from the Southwest perspective, the Mexican perspective, menudo, which
Tripe.
I, I still can't understand why. Was it Ricky Martin's band named themselves Menudo back in the 70s? I haven't figured that out yet, but but it's not a band for those of you that grew up in the
Yeah,
80s. It's a food, and it's
it's
tripe.
tripe.
So they figured out how to take tripe and hominy and mix it together with spices and make it taste delicious. And so you're absolutely right, absolutely 100% right about that. And again, I mean, think about this. It's taking those things that were discarded and a people through their sensuality
Mhm.
and their love making that which was discarded and devalued sacred.
Yeah.
I love it.
This is a funny thing. Like I love chitlins, chitterlings for the bourgeoisie. I love chitlins, and people will say, "Oh, well, that's slave food," right? And here's the thing. Yes, it's slave food, but there's a whole lot that is slave food. Like, for example, chicken gizzards or livers. That was,
Come on.
what was discarded is now turned into a delicacy. Like chicken gizzards are fucking expensive now. Or oxtails. Go out and try to buy some oxtails right now. I went and looked I was going to smoke some oxtails, and it was like a 1 pound package of oxtails was like $27. It used to be oxtails were nothing. Or like there's another thing that's a big deal now, marrow, beef marrow. And so they beef marrow is now a delicacy. And so finding soup bones or marrow bones these things are outrageously expensive because there's a big demand for them. So the thing is, a lot of these things, yeah, they have humble origins, but let me say this, and I've said this before to many people in coaching situations, is never despise humble beginnings.
Yeah.
Never despise humble beginnings. And there are a lot of things out here that they have humble origins. You mentioned crawfish, man. Crawfish, you know what crawfish are? Crawfish are fucking marsh roaches.
Yes, they are.
Literally, that's what they are.
Oh,
They're
I
they're
know.
they're roaches that
I know.
grow in the marsh. but now,
I try not to think about it when I'm enjoying them.
but I don't even care, man, because like shrimp, shrimp
Yes,
is
yeah,
also related to roaches, and then when you
yes,
like lobster is also related
yeah,
to roaches, and crabs are related to spiders. So
yes, I
you
know,
know, so
I
I
know.
don't care, man. It's like, but the thing is, this is
But
what I
you
want
just think. But the point is, who thought about eating a marsh cockroach? Oh, I know I can take that and make it taste good, right?
to. Well, no, I mean, like here's the thing. Like back in the day, when humanity is like kind of like in its origin state, basically they're looking at everything as like, okay, basically everything they're looking at. Okay, can I fuck this or can I eat it?
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, that's really what it came down to. So
yeah.
so basically, if you find something that's okay, this is good stuff. Okay, let's give this a whirl. Let's see if we can't cook this and make something out of it. But but anyway, I'll say this, man. This has been really a good show. I mean, because I think that there's when you look at food, there is so much to unpack here, and we've really just scratched the surface in this
So
last hour or so that we've been talking. Um, but there's so much. But first of all, number one, if you're concerned about the quality of your food, work with people and stop eating what you're eating and put pressure on the producers to make things better. That's number one. The second thing is that understand that your food time is sacred. That when you're eating food, you're and this is another thing too. Whether you're eating plant or animal, you're eating something living that gave up its life to sustain you. So there is a sacredness to eating. And then the third thing is eat some food with some people that are not like you. I mean, really conscientiously make the effort to eat with someone who's not like you. They're not the same ethnicity, they're not the same culture, not the same language, not from the same place. Eat with them because you're going to learn something about them and you will learn something about you. So those are the three things that I would take away from this discussion.
love it. Love where the discussion went. Really love it. We just kind of kicked it around as a fun idea,
I know.
and it ended up being sacred. So I love it.
Yeah, man, we found the divine in it, and
Yeah, we did.
that's the thing I love
Yes, we
about
did.
my conversations with you, Aaron, is that we always find the sacred and the divine in things, and
Yeah.
I think that from a thinking standpoint, I think that if you try to find the sacred and the divine in things, and yes, I'm speaking as someone who's an engineer, a scientist, or whatever, there is a sacredness and a divine to things, even if you dismiss the notion of any God.
Mm.
Okay,
Yep. I
so
agree.
you want to look at comments or anything, or are you ready to land the plane?
No, we. I don't think there's not a ton here. I don't think so. Sure. Yeah. Let's take them. You've posted some. Tommy says, I don't know good seafood. I live in Ohio. Let me just say something, and I'm curious your take on this, Derrick, because I could tell a difference when I was a kid between the seafood we got in Colorado and when we went out to the coast. And it didn't matter whether it was Gulf Coast to
Mhm.
visit family in Houston or whether it was California, East Coast, wherever it was. There was a significant difference
Yep.
in the food. And then I remember as an adult in my 20s, now early 30s, visiting someone on the Gulf Coast and saying we have to have seafood because we can't get good seafood. And he said, "Oh, there's a new crab joint that opened up,
Mhm.
a brand new crab joint. We'd love to take you to." And it was Joe's Crab Shack.
Oh wow.
And so what I have discovered is that most of these restaurants, they're flying in their food out to all their restaurants anyway. It doesn't matter if you're in Ohio, Colorado, or California, unless you go to places on the beach that are specifically getting their catches from local fishermen. It's the same thing as me trying to find a good tomato or a good watermelon, which is homegrown here.
Yep.
So, I don't know. I don't even know if you can go as much on the coast and find as good seafood or any better seafood than what I can get in Colorado because it's all being mass produced and sent out to all these restaurants anyway. So that's my thoughts on that. I don't know if you have something
So
different
let
there.
me say this about that, right? Like if you go to Seattle or San Francisco on the West Coast, or if you go to like New York or Baltimore on the East Coast, you're going to find fantastic seafood, right? And you can find good seafood like in the most mundane of places, right? In either one of those, either of those four cities. But through the magic of the supply chain, they're able to ship food, all over the place. So this is what I've learned is that if you go to say a good seafood restaurant in, let's say, Omaha. Let's pick-
We have one in Colorado Springs. I know where you're
right,
going. We have one in Colorado Springs. It's expensive,
it's
but they get it flown in fresh every day.
exactly. So what they're doing is they have contacts in these fishmongers in these big seafood
Yeah.
cities, and they have buyers that go out and they buy this, or they know the people and they know the quality that they're going to get, and they get it right. The problem is that like the supply chain works with high end stuff, right? Like, say, for example, if you want genuine um, North Texas grass fed beef, right? Now, if you're in North Texas, you can get this beef and it's pretty ubiquitous. But if you're like, say, in Detroit and you want to get a Texas grass-fed steak, you're going to go to a high-end restaurant to get that.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that in the supermarket. You're not even, chances are you won't even get that in your local Whole Foods. Okay. So, there are some things that are limited by the supply chain, by distance and all of that. But if you want good stuff, and let me say this too, that if you really want good stuff and you don't mind paying a little bit more for it, there are all kinds of online vendors where you could buy fish. Like there's a company called Honolulu Fish Company, right? And they're based in Hawaii, but they have warehouses on the West Coast and on the East Coast, and you're able to get fresh fish, high quality fish anywhere in the country. So
Yeah.
there is a way, and then the same thing with vegetables or fruit. Like, let's say if you want a peach, I'm going to tell you something. I've been all over the world. I've literally been to every single country in South and Central America, every one, and I have not had a peach better than I had a Georgia peach.
Mm.
The South Georgia peaches are just the best peaches that money can buy, right? So if you're out shopping for peaches, don't buy peaches from Argentina or peaches from Costa Rica or peaches from China. Find a place that has Georgia peaches and buy them. Or if you're looking at a watermelon, right? The two best states in America where I've had watermelons from have been Alabama and Mississippi.
Mm.
If you want a watermelon, find one that comes from either one of those two places. If you're looking at beef, if you want grass-fed beef, I mean North Texas is your spot. Find it takes a little bit of effort. It takes a little bit of effort, but I promise you that if you really want good stuff, if you spend the time looking for it, you'll find it. And as far as shrimp, Aaron, back to your point, this is where it all began. The
Yeah.
shrimp cocktail. Okay, find a good Asian market or Latino market that sells fresh shrimp, live shrimp, right? And get them with the head on while they're alive. And then prepare them from there. And I promise you that the shrimp that you eat will be more to your liking
Tastes like shrimp.
than if you buy farm raised, already processed, because that's what we're used to. We want the quick and easy, right?
Right. 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 Exactly.
So anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Good stuff. No, I'm glad you went there. That's good stuff. Um, yeah, just most contents I'm seeing, just talking about what we're talking about.
Yeah, Tommy said curry is my medicine, and I love that, man. I mean, there's something special about a good curry. And let me talk about that for a second. Like if you go to Jamaica, Jamaica is a really interesting place because in Jamaica you have African influence, you have English influence, you have Indian influence, and you have Chinese influence. And there's a confluence of all of that in one space.
Jamaican food.
So when you get a Jamaican dish, a Jamaican curry, a Jamaican curry is different than an Indian curry, but it's influenced, it's informed by Jamaican curry, right? But there's also an Asian, a Southeast Asian influence to that also, and there's also an English influence to it. So it's different. It's not quite the same. And again, you only know that if you traveled and experienced different stuff. But that's why I say it's important that you spend that time communing with other people. Yep.
All right, bro. I think it was a win.
I think so too. This was a really good one, man, and there was a lot of growing in real time, which
For
I'm,
sure.
I'm stealing your thunder because that's the closing. So I'm going to kick it over to you, man, and let you close it out.
Hey, everybody. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving if you chose to celebrate it. Great time with your family. Hope you're looking forward to a wonderful December and a great new year. And thanks for watching this. And Derrick, I thought, man, your contributions tonight were just chef's kiss.
I appreciate that, bro. I mean, listen, I always love talking to you because every time I talk to you, whether it's online or offline, I grow. I'm better for my conversations with you, and I love you
Yeah.
with my whole heart.
Love you too, man. Love you too. All right.